Hey everyone! Guess what? It's that time of year again. That time of year when everybody pops their head out for just a second to let you know their top 10 favorite albums of that particular year. And I am no different. I do this every fucking year, but I waited until the very last minute, the last week of 2021 to let you know Old Head's top 10 favorite albums of 2021. Not the top 10, not the best albums, because fuck those people that say that shit. These are my top 10 favorite albums of 2021. And I waited this long because, funny enough, like you would think that this is kind of an easy thing. Like, hey, what are the 10 albums that you really liked? But I fucking stress myself out over this shit. And it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But needless to say, I waited until the last minute to make sure that all the right albums were here and in the right order. And I think it might be. Fuck, I don't know. Let's just jump into it before I end up changing my ranking anyway. That was a bit of the song Blown Away from Cat's Paw, the 15th studio album from Matthew Sweet. I did a mini review on this album, like on the halfway point of the year with a few other albums that were out at the time. And this album ends up rounding out my top 10 of the year, mostly because of its amazing staying power. This album came out way back in January, and it's an album that I consistently go back to listen to, and it's fucking cool. It's like a very stripped down, guitar heavy Matthew Sweet album, the way that I like them, and it's completely produced, mixed, recorded, all of that nice shit by Matthew Sweet, and all of the instruments except for the drums also played by Matthew Sweet. And I don't know. It's got a great energy to it. There are times that to me it almost seems like if you took what Neil Young did with Crazy Horse in the 70s and just made them power pop songs, that's what you got here with Cat's Paw. But great album, great songs. I still enjoy it a year later. So that's my number 10, Cat's Paw from Matthew Sweet. Now, what you would have heard there if Warner Records weren't completely lame would have been a clip of the song Pushing the Tides from Hushed and Grim, the 8th studio album from Mastodon. Now, I did a pretty good review of this album on I believe the last episode of Old Bollocks. Don't worry, Old Bollocks is going to be coming back. We just took a little bit of a break, but I'm sure we're going to be back in the new year with some more shit for you. But honestly, my first listen of the new Mastodon album, and I was like, man, all of these songs are fucking amazing. And then as time went on, the more that I listened to it, the more I realized that they're all great songs, but none of them stand out from anything else they've really done over the past handful of years. A few of them do. But at the end of the day, the more that I went back to listen to this album, the more it just seemed like a really long Mastodon album. It's 90 minutes worth of music, which is great. As a Mastodon fan, 90 minutes worth of new Mastodon. Awesome. But when they announced a double album, I was hoping there'd be a little bit more to it. I realized there's a theme, but it's not good enough to warrant the size of this album. So it's a lot of great shit. Maybe I would have preferred it more if they had halved it up and maybe released one half this year and the next half next year. Whatever, they decided to do it this way. But even though it's an album that I like everything on it, and I really enjoyed, especially that first listen, as time went on, I would go to the album and go, I don't have time for this. But that doesn't mean it's not great. It is great. It's just not as great or unique as I had wished that it would be, because I know those guys have it in them to make a different album. So hopefully next time around they give us something different, because this is a little bit more of the same, still very good. A couple little things here and there that maybe they're pushing some boundaries still, but not enough for my taste. So Hushed and Grim ends up here at number 9. Now that was a little bit of the song Labyrinths from the album The Delusional Mystery of the Self Part 1 from Mental Devastation. I got the album image up here in the corner because they have not released a vinyl version of this album yet, but when they do, you know I will be getting one. This is fucking great. This was one of the surprises of the year because I had never heard of Mental Devastation before. They're a band from Chile, formed in, I think, 2009, and this is their second album. And I was just blown away with how old school, but also not just sort of retro for retro's sake, this album sounded. It hits that area. I've talked about it before. I love the late 80s and early 90s where thrash bands were fudging with progressive and technical shit. And that is all over this fucking album. All the performances are amazing. Even the production has kind of an old school vibe going on. And it's just one of those growers of an album where there's a lot going on, especially the first time you listen to it. And it is, even though it is progressive at times and technical at times, it's also very aggressive pretty much all the way through. But the more you listen to it, the more these things start popping out and you're like, man, there's so much going on in these songs. The vocalist, Alejandro Lagos, I believe is how you would pronounce his name. I love his delivery because he sounds a little bit like Home Dude from Violence, and at the same time, he could give Tom Araya a run for his money as well. You put those two things together, that is one hell of a fucking metal singer. And so the whole package of this is great. You even have that cool, the bass sound that almost sounds like it could be on like a Death album or something. But yeah, it's an album that I think it only came out like maybe a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago. But as soon as I heard it, I listened to it a bunch because I'm just like, where the fuck did these guys come from? But yeah, my number 8 album is The Delusional Mystery of the Self Part 1. So hey, we got a Part 2 coming, right? From Mental Devastation.
It's time to rock this motherfucker, cause I'm always out of style. Never change my style, cause my style is kinda fresh. You bitches asking for a sound check. Check 1, 2, bitch. You barely touch the ground, yeah. Choked up on your bounce game. Coming down the mountain. Copycat, you lucky that I let you hang around me. Check 3, 4, bitch. Get out there on the bounty. In the war zone, got these campers all around me.
I'm sure some of you knew this album was going to be here. That was Out of Style from the album Still Sucks from Limp Bizkit, their 6th album and their first in like 10 years. And this was one that they dropped kind of as a surprise on Halloween night. I did a reaction video to it. Some of you may have seen it. And for the most part, I really enjoy this album a lot. Once again, you have an image up there because there hasn't been... Has there been any physical version of this album released? Definitely no vinyl, but hey, Bizkit guys, I will get one when it comes out. But this album, to me, is just really fun. I reviewed this one on I think the same episode of Old Bollocks that I reviewed Mastodon. And it was just a fun album. And to me, it really does feel like a band embracing who they are and where they came from, because there's nods to all sorts of little things from the 90s, as well as just them doing what you expect Limp Bizkit to do. And honestly, I like the fact that it's a short album. It's like 32 minutes long. My only gripe, and the only thing that keeps it from being higher on this list, because I do enjoy most of it, this is going to be a weird word for some of you that aren't Limp Bizkit fans, but there is a dynamic quality to some of the older Limp Bizkit songs that isn't really there on these, and they seem sort of like in and out with what they were doing, which is fine because it's something a little bit different. It's a different approach for Limp Bizkit. And then there's like the NXS cover, which is done like acoustically, and then there's another acoustic song that's very brief. And honestly, when you're dealing with just 32 minutes of material, I would want there to be more meat in there. And so a couple of times they're just tracks that they're not bad. They just kind of kill the momentum of the album a little bit. But other than that, it's just a super fun album if you're a fan. If you're not, then sorry, you're not invited to the party anyway. So yeah, that's my number. What did I say? Number 7. Number 7. Limp Bizkit Still Sucks.
Channels dug in, meadows torn away. Can't stop it cause hell's in the way. I am up, you are not, we are a forever rock. I am coming down, coming down, coming down. That's all the prize of my horizon. All that I command might be damned. I've been trained by the best, fuck the rest. All you get is what I tell you to get.
Okay, that was All Eyes on the Prize from The Dark Parade by Mordred, their first album in 27 years. And I think I reviewed this album on the very first episode of Old Bollocks. Go back and check these out if you want to hear me talk at length about some of these albums. But I talked about how one of the big qualities of this album for me is that it doesn't like show you its hand all at once. Is that a term? I don't play fucking cards, but you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't reveal everything right away because it's not them coming back and doing kind of a Bay Area thrash funk thing like you would expect them to do. There's been an evolution and there's a different approach to how they're doing it. There's a different approach to Scott's vocals. And at first, it doesn't just grab you right away. It's very interesting to hear the first time you listen to it, but then the more you listen to it, the more you're like, yeah, like there's some really interesting shit here. And I'm not going to talk shit about other thrash albums that came out this year, but these guys didn't phone it in and just try to do what everybody wants them to do and end up making a really boring album. They made this album that for some people it might be challenging, for some people it might just not be their cup of tea. But you can't say that it sounds like any other album or any other band that's doing this kind of shit now. And that's really something to say for a band that, started in the 80s and took a fucking, 20 whatever, I think it was a 20-year break before they got back together and started doing shows. I don't know. It's been a while. But this is just one of those albums like the Matthew Sweet album that it's just had an amazing staying power with me. And it's one of those things that I see the album cover and go, fuck, I'm going to listen to that again. So it ends up here at number 6, Mordred, The Dark Parade. That was the song Headstand from Wild Type Droid, the 6th studio album from the band Failure. Very recently, you may have seen me do an unboxing of the big old Failure box set, but this is their brand new album. I don't have it on vinyl yet. It's been pre-ordered. I think it's still going to be a few months, but I can't wait. This is a really fucking good album from a really fucking good band that, to me, is a little bit underrated. I think they're getting a little bit more props. Do people still say props? They should, right? These days than they were for a while. But even then, more people should be talking about them. And the thing that I love about this album is that it is easily, well, not only is it their shortest album, it's got to be their most understated album. And just like you got a theme here with like the Mordred album, the Matthew Sweet album, where this is not an album where immediately it grabs you. There are things that you like about it first off, but it's so mellow, I guess, in its approach, almost deceptively so. But the songs end up being earworms, like things that really get stuck in your head. And it's got all of the elements from Failure that I really love, with the sort of odd guitar melodies and just the whole kind of spacey alt rock kind of thing that these guys have been doing. And I mean, at this point, like, you put Ken Andrews and Greg Edwards, let's not leave Kelly Scott out of it, but you put those dudes together, and whatever they put out is going to be fucking amazing to me. And this is just a really enjoyable, just vibe of an album, and I totally dig it. So it's my number 5, Wild Type Droid from Failure.
Colt 45, vehicular homicide. Insidious, the meticulous way that I've arrived. It's Colt 45, particular, so sublime. Ridiculous, the ubiquitous flow is so conniving.
What you heard right there was a bit of the song Colt 45, C-U-L-T 45, from A Magnificent Day for an Exorcism from 13, spelled with a 1 and a 3 in there somewhere, which is a group that was formed by the rapper Pharoah Monch. And I mean, you heard a little bit of it there. It's got, real drums and guitars in there, and it's a dark hip-hop album. The only hip-hop album that ended up on my top 10 this year. But to me, it came out of nowhere, because I didn't really know it was a thing that was happening. And there was a song that came out that they incorporated the main riff from, I believe, Hand of Doom from Black Sabbath. And I immediately was hooked, but the whole album fucking delivers, because Pharoah Monch is already an amazing rapper, but just the combination, and I always get names wrong, of Marcus Machado on guitar and Daru Jones on drums. Daru Jones actually played with Jack White and many other people. But that combination, it creates something really fucking magical, and another album that's like nothing else that you will hear this year. And the whole vibe of this album is fucking great. And I don't know what Pharoah Monch has in store for, the next phase of his career, but I wouldn't be mad if he did another one of these albums, and this is just the group he does, because it's fucking great. I mean, if that little taste you got, that's just a bit of it. It's an amazing album. And so that's why it's my number 4, A Magnificent Day for an Exorcism from 13. Yes, that was Death Technology from Bionic Swarm, from Cryptosis, the debut album from Cryptosis from the Netherlands. If you were a fan of theirs before under the name Distillator, something like that, then not really a debut, but for a debut for Cryptosis, which is them completely changing what they were doing, changing their name, and in my opinion, fucking nailing it. And to be honest, I know this is my number 3, but come here for a second. So, if you're like a metal fan and this album isn't anywhere in your top 10, I'm revoking your metal card, all right? And I'm gonna issue you a boring as fuck card. So there you go. Because this to me is a fucking album of metal this year. Like, how could anybody hear this and not be like, fucking A, man. Like that. I mean, if you don't listen to metal, great. If you do, come on, man. Come on. Even the fucking album cover is ridiculously awesome. So, but yes, it's thrash. It's technical. It's a little bit progressive. I think I reviewed this on something, a video I did. Fuck, I don't know. This one's been out for a little while too, but this one has just not let up for me this year. Every time I put this fucking album on, I'm just like, holy shit, man. I can't wait to see where this band goes. They're fucking fantastic. This album is fantastic. Yeah, for me, this is the thrash album of the year. There is no thrash album better than this one. But it only made it to my number 3. Isn't that weird? Because there are 2 that really got to me. So, Cryptosis Bionic Swarm. Let's move on to number 2.
Watching our sinners as they shift away in the hourglass. Yes, the sands of time, the years, the months, the days, the hours. You're dropping on dice.
Once again, is this on your list? Okay, let me take that. I'll hand you this one. Torn Arteries. That was the Scythe's Remorseless Swing. Boom. From Torn Arteries, the 7th studio album from Carcass. And this is another album. I see that this is on a lot of people's lists, and it fucking should be. It is fantastic. But this is a different kind of album than what I was referring to earlier. This is an album that immediately grabs you and says, this album is awesome. And then the more you listen to it, it tells you, oh shit, remember how awesome you thought this album was? It's even more awesome because there's so much great shit on here. Carcass have, now you could say that it's similar in ways to Surgical Steel, but the more you listen to it, the more the differences reveal themselves. And on Cranked and Ranked, who's a Cranked and Ranked fan here? Let me hear it. Woo! Anyway, we did a ranking of the Carcass albums, and I refer to this album as a more sort of what's the word? A confidently sort of laid back delivery from Carcass. Like they're just like, yeah, we can fucking do this. It's and that's, I think that's the big difference, is that it feels like a very confident album from a band that are just fucking unfuckwithable, as I say. And so, what more can I say about this album? A lot of people have talked about how this album is great, and they're right. And so it's my number 2, Carcass, Torn Arteries. That was the song Sundowner from the album that just fucking magically appeared in my life out of nowhere and completely blew everything else away this year. The album is Classics and the band is Four Stroke Baron. I knew fuck all about this band before this album came out. Talked about this on an episode of Old Bollocks, and it is literally an album that I wasn't expecting, but then became the album that I think I listened to probably at least twice a week ever since it came out. Like this week, yes, I've also listened to it twice. It is amazing, but it's also amazing because it's something that I wasn't expecting. It's progressive metal, although I think on their label website, they refer to them as new wave and heavy progressive rock, which I guess that's in there too. But you know, for us simple folk, it's progressive metal. And I normally don't really listen to progressive metal, but something about this album just ticked all the fucking boxes for the kind of shit that I want to hear. And I didn't know this band and immediately became a huge fan. And now I own all of their shit. All of their shit's fucking great. But this album in particular, The songwriting is just so fucking good. I'm gonna say it again. It's an album that is really cool first time you listen to it, but gets fucking cooler. And on top of that, you have this really cool production, which I think he's credited as sound design and mixing, Mr. Devin Townsend, behind the boards. It just, the combination of Kirk Witt and Matt Valerino, guitars, vocals, and drums. I'm guessing Kirk played bass on this as well because there's only 2 of them listed on this thing. But whatever combination that their brains and everything that they threw together for this, it is fucking amazing. And I think it hit me even harder because I wasn't expecting it. And that's, to me, that's what keeps me doing things like this. Like doing this fucking channel when there's so many people out there that don't give a shit, it doesn't matter. Like I feel compelled to talk about music because this far along in my career, my history as a fan, I still get surprised by music that just backs me against a wall. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Where did this come from? Where has this been all my life? I can't recommend this album enough. It is one that will not be for everybody. Some of you will probably think it's awful. But those of you who, like with me, it ticks the right boxes, you know, your life is forever changed because this album is fucking phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, all the other albums I talked about, fucking great. But classics, it's already a fucking classic to me. And yeah, I know very little about Four Stroke Baron. They are a mysterious band, but they fucking rule. And they are a band that like I'm now they're on my radar. I'm now ready for whatever the fuck they do next because man, they showed up in my life in a big bad way this year. And so my number 1 album, Classics by Four Stroke Baron. All right, that wraps it up. As you might be able to hear, I sound a little bit hoarse. I don't know what happened with my voice, but maybe I need to take a break, and I will. I think maybe for a week or 2, it'll be a little bit silent on the Old Head channel. But 2022, I ain't fucking around. I'm coming back in a big way with more of the same old shit, maybe some new shit, some fucking merch. Get ready, people. So yeah, thank you very much for watching my top 10 of 2021. There's a lot to look forward to in 2022. So let's see what happens. I'll meet you here at the same time next year, right? All right, cool. All right, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all again next year.